It's been a weird morning. Usually when I get up, Abigail's awake and ready to go. And usually, she has been for several hours. This morning, though, I awake to find her dozing nearby. Long past when she'd normally be up, she complained about having a headache, so we decided to take a walk through the forest to clear her head. So far, it seems to have had the opposite effect, though, and we've been walking in uncomfortable silence. It's been maybe an hour or so when we first noticed the buzzing. At first, it was very faint, like the sound of the wind or the rustling trees, but then it started to get louder and louder. Fairies! It's the first word she's said in ages. She pulls me closer to her as the buzzing gets closer. Sure enough, the source of the noise soon comes into view. Dozens of fairies, maybe even as many as 100, flutter past overhead. They form a cloud rushing through the forest, nimbly weaving over and under the branches. When I first saw fairies back in the clearing, their movements were graceful and delicate, but now they're frenetic and urgent. The swarm travels right towards us, though they don't seem to notice or care about us at all. The buzzing has grown to an almost ear-splitting level, and I realize it comes from their wings. Like bees, their tiny wings beat rapidly to keep them up. They're a blur against the fairies' snowy-looking bodies. Suddenly, several of the fairies split off from the rest and dive towards us. I fling up my hands to protect myself, but they come to a halt overhead. This is my first chance to get a good look at them. Their bodies are smooth and pale blue with a whitish tinge. Their eyes are beady and small, looking more like tiny flecks of obsidian than anything with sight. At first, it looks like they're wearing gowns, but then I realize that what looks like clothes are part of their body. Colorful plumage helps make each fairy distinct from one another. Rather than legs, their bodies taper off into a point, like little ballerinas. Like snowflakes, no two look the same. One of them turns a somersault while the others hover anxiously.
Our queen! Is that you? Have you returned?
Their voices are all identical, squeaky and raspy, yet impressively loud despite their tiny size. It takes a second for me to realize that they're addressing me. I'm sorry. I'm not your queen. I'm just an ordinary human.
A human? Ordinary? Don't think so.
They crowd in a little closer, their fingers grabbing the empty air as if to pick me up and carry me away. I take a step backwards, with Abigail still holding tight to my arm. But the fairies just creep in even closer. Their wings beat hummingbird fast, distractingly loud. I promise, I'm just a regular person. You're mistaken if you think I'm your queen.
A mistake? Have you seen her? We've been looking.
We haven't seen her. We haven't seen anything like her. I have no idea what a fairy queen looks like, but I'm sure I haven't seen anything that fits the description. How long has she been missing?
It's hard to say. Did you know? Time is a human concept.
Their answers aren't helpful at all. They at least understood my question, which means they have some knowledge of time. It doesn't make a difference, though. The rest of their swarm has moved on, the buzzing fading once again, but they don't seem bothered. If we see her, I'll be sure to tell her you're looking.
That won't be needed. She surely knows. That's why she's our queen.
The fairies' peculiar way of speaking in turn is almost comical. Since they haven't left us alone yet, I assume that they're still expecting or hoping for something. I'm a little afraid to find out what. Do the three of you have names?
We don't. We have no need. Names are for humans too.
They all nod in unison. Given how everything else about them seems to be insect-like, I just assume that they have a hive mind of sort. It would fit with everything else I know about the forest. I'm getting a bit tired of all the different networks and connections. It's silly, but it feels a little like not knowing the password to a friend's Wi-Fi. To help keep them straight in my mind, I give each of them a name. The one with the purple flower is Hai, Anon has the blonde hair, and the last one is Frio. Beside me, Abigail tugs at my sleeve surreptitiously. She's angled away from the conversation, trying to lead me out of it. I turn back to the fairies, putting on my best customer service voice. We have to go now. It was nice to meet you. I hope you're able to find your queen soon. I don't want to turn my back on them, so I wait for them to say their farewells and leave, but instead they come in even closer, causing Abigail to gasp.
Don't go. What if you stayed? You could be our queen. You would do. We could make it so. It would be so easy.
Alarm bells ringing in my head. I start to step backwards, with Abigail keeping right on me.
There isn't anyone else. Not everyone is suitable. But you are. Let's show you what it'd be like. We can give you a taste. Would that be alright?
Their buzzing and flittering slows as 3 pairs of eyes stare at us. Abigail squeezes my arm. I move my mouth to say no, but the way their gaze pierces into me roots me to the spot. Like tiny dancers adorned with glitter, their skin shimmers in the low light, filtering through the clouds. Madison? Come on, let's go. But I can't, or rather, I don't want to. Not yet. What if they know something useful, Abigail?
We know lots of things. Secret things, clever things. We can know you too.
They're pests. Their buzzing is a little too loud and their voice a little too shrill. But
you don't belong here. We can tell. But wouldn't you like to belong?
they creep a little closer in a synchronized motion. They're close enough now that I could reach out and grab one if I wanted to, or slap them away. I don't, though. A place to belong? Could they really offer that? What exactly do you mean? I can feel Abigail's grip tighten around my coat, but she doesn't say anything. Sensing an opening, the fairies circle dizzyingly around our heads.
The forest doesn't reject you, but it doesn't accept you either. We could change that though. Whatever it is you want, whatever you're searching for, if you help us. Wouldn't you like that?
With a jolt, I turn to face Abigail. I'm sure she knows what I'm thinking. Whatever I want. There's only one thing. Abigail stares back at me for a moment, and then presses herself against me. Looking up at the fairies, I nod. Okay, just a taste. Excited, they dive downward until they're level with my face. Abigail cringes but doesn't let go. As one, the fairies close in, placing their hands on my face like they're checking my temperature. Their hands are frigid, painfully so. It's amplified by the fact that I haven't felt cold in days. My hands jerk upwards out of instinct, ready to pry them away, but I don't. Then one of the fairies moves their hands to cover my lips. One covers my ears and the other covers my eyes. For a split second, I feel like I'm falling through the air. And then it all hits me. All I see is black. I'm alone, and yet hundreds of presences flood my consciousness all at once. I can tell they're the fairies, but I don't know how I can tell. I'm bombarded by their awareness like tiny darts, not using words or thoughts or intentions, but just feeling. They're somehow distant, as if behind a wall, but so present. I try to find the semi-familiar presences of Hai, Frio, and Anan, but they're indistinguishable from the rest. There's no individuality, no sense of identity at all. They're just the fairies as a whole. But I can feel what they're feeling. Panic and anger and hurt all churned together. The feeling of being lost, of not knowing where to go or what to do, but not being able to sit still. Though I can't tie it to any particular memory or event, the feeling hits me so strongly, so undiluted that I think I might cry. I can feel that they've been scared by something, but I don't know what that something is. Then at last I feel a nudge in my mind. The sensation of being noticed. The presence takes me in, welcoming me. It occurs to me that I no longer exist. I try to ask what's going on, but I don't need to. The moment the question forms, the presence with me starts to answer. Images play in my head, ones I've never seen before. They're grainy like old film. If I try to focus on a particular detail, the whole thing becomes muddy. I can see flames burning away at the forest. The fire is so real that I can almost feel its warmth. But when I start to focus on it, that too vanishes. The presence of the fairies weighs on my mind, an uninvited audience to the next part. I can see a fairy stumbling alone, but something's wrong with it. I realize instantly I can't feel its presence. Where it should be, there's just a gaping hole, so vast and profound that it hurts by sheer exclusion. It's agonizing. I want to tear my heart out of my chest so I don't have to feel it anymore. The presence of the fairies, the whole nest, tries to reach after it to fill the hole, but it won't allow itself to be touched. The moonlight overhead, which I crave, falls into the lone fairy, who hastens to escape it. The lone fairy flees, and the rest of them, the rest of us, mourn. One word pulses through my head, both the condemnation and a reassurance. One word, though I don't know what it means. The vision twists and I see a woman, but she isn't a woman. She's also a fairy, but not just. I'm so happy and relieved to see her that I just know she's the fairy queen. I can feel how much she misses the lone fairy. I know because I miss her too, desperately. I can see her searching, her hope never fading, until one day she's gone. The loss is even greater this time. A sick mixture of guilt and shame plagues me, because I don't know where she is. I don't even know how long she's been missing. How could I have not noticed? The loneliness is so great that I want to do anything to erase it. Another silhouette flickers just out of sight, but I can't keep track of it. We all have to watch it together, and then I realize it's me. But just like the fairy queen I saw before, it's also not me. Visions of time pass, months, years, centuries, and throughout all the loneliness is gone. It all feels right. I could fix this. The fairies remove their hands from me and I burst back into the real world with a mighty gasp for air. Addison, are you alright? The fairies dart back up, away from the furious glare that Abigail gives them. All I can feel now is her hand clutching me, and I put my arm on her shoulder for support. My head spins, and for a second, I think I might fall over. The dizzy spell passes soon. Once I'm confident I'm not going to collapse, I nod. I'm fine. How long was I out? Abigail's face flickers into a look of confusion. She presses her hand to my forehead. Out? I didn't think they'd even begun. What? I watch the fairies, struggling to comprehend how much could have happened in an instant like that. There's no way.
We told you, didn't we? We aren't bound by time. Join us and you won't be either. Now that you've seen, and now that you've felt, will you join us?
Eyes wide, Abigail looks up at me. She doesn't have to say anything for me to know she's begging me to decline. I wish she could have felt how warm it was, how nice it was to belong like that. Yet at the same time, it feels like a distant dream now. Something detached and fading. I try to remember the sensation, but I can't. It's water slipping through my fingers. It seems so real, but it wasn't. It was only a second. I can't sign my life away to the fairies for 1 second of visions, no matter how right it felt, no matter how comfortable. I'm sure that I was just seeing what they wanted me to see. I smile at Abigail and then shake my head, rejecting the fairies. I'm sorry, but I can't. Thank you for showing me what it would be like, though.
How can we persuade you? We need our queen soon. You could be our only hope.
I know you do, but I'm sorry. That just can't be me.
We hope you change your mind. We'll be waiting for you. We'll be waiting for a queen.
With that, they turn tail and dart off in the same direction that their swarm had gone. Soon, all trace of them is gone, like they'd never even been there. Addison, are you sure you were all right? Yeah, I'm sure. It was just a lot. Was that really that fast? Yes, they touched your face and then a moment later you gasped. That's insane. It felt like a long time, like years had passed. Abigail looks troubled, staring off into the forest where the fairies disappeared. Fairy magic is strange and beyond me. They're similar to the forest spirit and yet different, but in a way you can't put into words? That's right. You certainly did see a lot, didn't you? Yeah, I guess so. Have you ever met their queen? Or seen what she looks like? Just once, long ago. She and the forest spirit are both guardians of the forest. Did you see her in your vision? I think back to what I saw as best as I can remember. The image shifts and shakes in my head, not wanting to be called to mind. More than what she looked like, I just remember how I felt. So happy and relieved to see her. I did, but I didn't get a clear look at her. I knew who she was, but I didn't know if I'd recognize her if I passed her on the street. Do you think you could mistake me for her, like they did? Absolutely not. You're much prettier than she is. Abigail says it so very matter-of-factly, as if she didn't give me an enormous compliment. And she carries on like it too. Be still, my beating heart. But to the fairies, I expect it's hard for them to tell the difference between humans, so maybe you look like her to them. I wonder how long the queen's been gone. It seems like they've been coping just fine without her, until something happened to scare them. Something like what? Something hot and bright, something burning, something that hurt to think about. I don't know. I think it had to do with fire, maybe? So much of what I saw felt real, but most of it wasn't. Fire. Worry creases her face. What's wrong? Did you remember something? No, it was just a thought. Rather than elaborate, she fidgets with her hands. I don't push the subject. Maybe that's enough fresh air for today. We can head back to the church. All right. I'm pretty sure I detect a hint of relief in her voice. For the first time, I lead the way home. At least, I hope it's the way. I'm reasonably confident. At my side, Abigail remains quiet and lost in her thoughts. With one hand, she clings limply to my sleeve, trusting my navigation. I don't disturb her, instead concentrating on remembering the path. It's to challenge myself. I'm sure that if necessary, Abigail would be able to lead us home from anywhere. Still, I'm beginning to fear that I've led us astray when the grim walls of the church start to come into view. A mixture of relief and pride flows through me. It's also a little bittersweet. I've come to think of the church as home, even though I never felt that way about the cabin. Despite the fact that the concept of home is just a formality now, surrounding ourselves with walls and roof doesn't change a whole lot. Clouds are beginning to settle overhead, muting the daylight and making everything murky. It feels fitting for the mood. Abigail speeds up a bit as we reach the doors, and she's the first one inside. She sits down on one of the benches, fatigued. Mind if I join you? I gesture at the open spot beside her. Please do. Wordlessly, she rests her head against my shoulder. Headache still? She nods. I'm afraid so. Our encounter there sure didn't help. I'm sure. They gave me a headache of sorts too. More of a notion that I can't get out of my head. The fairy's outstanding offer sits with me. As hard as I try, I can't fully push the idea away. If there isn't any other way out of this, then maybe being a fairy queen would be preferable to just being a normal ghost. As long as I could still have Abigail with me. That's a last resort though. Because for as long as I can, I have to hold out hope that things can just go back to normal. That Tara and I can leave Eysenfeld the way we arrived. And that we can take Abigail with us. Beside me, Abigail shifts her head just a little. I'm sorry, am I bothering you like this? Not at all. I wonder if she's close enough to hear my heart beating. Maybe it can't always be like this, but just for now it's all right.